This video is brought to you by the like button. For every like you give, one more zombie will be eliminated from this cold, cruel world, driving us all closer to a more peaceful, zombie-free life. This young girl can live the life she always wanted with your tax-free donation of a single like. Like the video now and help make this world a better place. Zetsubo no Shima is actually my least favorite map on Black Ops 3, but with that being said, it's still an incredible map. Like, all things considered, and when you compare this to the other maps in the entire series, I mean, this map is excellent. The Easter egg is definitely quite tedious, considering that, you know, it's pretty much just a fetch quest the entire time. But nonetheless, still a really great, fun map, and one that I don't play that often, so I'm actually kind of happy that the wheel forced me to play this today. But I saw on my YouTube feed the other day that a second trailer went up for Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer, and when I tell you that I am so insanely excited for that movie, I am a huge fan of Christopher Nolan's work, even some of the stuff that people might not necessarily like. But without a doubt, my least favorite work from him is probably, it's actually really hard to choose because I like them all. I think it has to be Tenet, right? Like, Tenet was just so confusing. And it feels like every single time I rewatch that movie, which I tend to do, you know, at least once a year since the film came out. Every time I rewatch it, I feel like I've learned something new and I say, oh, that makes complete sense now when you link this scene with this scene. And then the next time I rewatch it, I remember that, and then I go, wait, no, does that make sense? You know what I mean? Like, Tenet is just an overly confusing film. And to be honest, I don't even know if Christopher Nolan can follow his own movie. Not to say that he definitely can't. I'm assuming with him being the director and co-writer, or did he? It doesn't matter. I'm not entirely convinced either way that he is able to follow his own film. But with that being said, nobody can argue against his directing chops. I mean, with films like Dunkirk and Interstellar and Inception, and of course the Dark Knight trilogy, no one can argue his directing chops. He genuinely is one of the greatest directors of our time, of our generation, and I cannot wait to watch Oppenheimer. One of his previous films, Interstellar, is actually in my top 10 films of all time. Now, my top 10 films of all time is also one of those instances where it's hard to actually form a true top 10 list. And if I were to form it, it would be in no particular order because picking a favorite film is just impossible. Like, there's no chance. Also, like my zombies maps, it tends to change from time to time. Like, from the feelings that I have, I believe Interstellar will always be in my top 10. I feel like there's zero chance that that will ever change because I just genuinely love that film with all of my heart. It has a lot of feelings. The story makes sense. I'm able to follow it. There's a lot of stuff that's kind of confusing upon your first watch. Now, that's kind of all Nolan's films. But Interstellar, I don't know. That film just, it gets me, man. But with that being said, I actually got a chance to see Guardians of the Galaxy 3 as well. And I'm struggling with this one. Not in the sense of the filmmaking itself. I think it's genuinely an amazing film. I mean, I'm struggling in trying to place it amongst the other Marvel films. Because everyone has their list of, like, what they believe their favorite Marvel films are. And Guardians 3, I loved so much. And for some reason, I'm having just the most difficult time placing it. Ah! Get away! I gotta get this gun. Gotta get it. Did I get it? I didn't get it. I don't have enough. We're using the MR6. Oh, let's get it. How much is this gun? 1,300. Where's another gun I can buy? Where do I go? Oh, you? What? No. Wasn't there another zombie around? Can I get the points? Oh, I gotta backtrack. Where's a gun I can buy? Where do I go? All right, the KRM, we're using you. Hey, I just need one more shot. Either way. Back on track, Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I loved this movie so much. It's hard to say if I prefer this one or the first one. Not to say that I'm excluding the second one, it's just, I love the second one. I really, really do. Probably more than most people. But at the same time, in terms of the Guardians films, it's probably my least. But this film just had so much heart. The villain was actually good. Like, a good villain in a Marvel movie, that is unheard of. But either way, Genuinely enjoyed the movie. If you haven't seen it yet, go check it out. It's an amazing theater experience. You know, pick up some popcorn, as expensive as it may be, grab some candy, a soda, and just sit down and enjoy the 2.5-hour ride that is Guardians 3. Now, talking of the topic of like my favorite films of all time, I actually just rewatched one of my all-time favorites, 12 Angry Men. I know, I'm about to go full movie nerd on you here for a second, but the honest truth is that 12 Angry Men, it's from 68 or something like that. It's an old one, black and white. Kino Lorber, I believe, just recently did a 4K transfer, and so I picked up the 4K copy of the movie. I know, I'm a real film nerd. No, what happened? So I rewatched 12 Angry Men after seeing it for the first time when I was real young. Like, I was just getting into movies and I was looking up some of the best movies that you have to watch. And among the list was films like The Godfather and Jurassic Park, Terminator 2. And then out of all the ones that were on the list that are pretty much just kind of like dramas or action films, there's this film called 12 Angry Men. And I don't know why I was confused by the title. I think I was just kind of expecting... I don't know what I was expecting. So I did a bit of research on it, and I forget all the details that I kind of went through before I said, all right, I'm gonna watch this film. And it was black and white, and when you're a youngster, you're like, yeah, black and white film's real boring, right? But when I tell you that that movie actually blew me away, like little 12 or 13-year-old me was stunned, and that was kind of one of the first movies that made me go, okay, black and white films can be amazing, and films in general, I think, is going to be my passion for the rest of my life. So anyway, long story short, I pick up the 4K transfer from Kino Lorber, and I rewatch this movie, and I think it may be my favorite film of all time. I still need to process that thought, because that is a huge statement, right? That is an enormous kind of thing to say, considering how many films are out there and the types of films that I'm actually into. Hey, there's Quick Revive. I swear you weren't here last time. Maybe I'm just a silly goose. I don't know. Either way, 12 Angry Men, it's an older black and white film from the 60s, and literally it's just it's 12 guys on a jury. Essentially, the trial is for this 18-year-old young man who is being tried for murdering his father. And so the jury is sitting here and they're trying to figure out whether or not this boy did it or didn't do it, whether he's innocent or guilty. And what precedes you is an hour and a half of some of the best dialogue ever written for a film. Speaking of best dialogue ever written for a film, I forgot my bucket. How did I do that? And I don't mean to go on and on about these films in this video. It's just, films is genuinely one of my passions. I love films. I've been trying to get a couple of short films made for a long time. It's just doing this stuff that my brain comes up with. The stories that I want to tell requires a lot of money, of which I don't have. Another one of my favorite films of all time is actually a much newer film from 2014 called Nightcrawler. And essentially all it is a film starring Jake Gyllenhaal about a guy trying to make some money. And what he discovers is this thing called night crawling, which essentially is going around at night with a film camera and going around to accidents or crimes or whatever and filming them and then selling that footage to different news stations. And that's how these so-called night crawlers make a living. So Jake Gyllenhaal becomes obsessed with this idea, gives it a try, and he's actually pretty good at it. And then he discovers that he's really good at it. And then at one point in the film, he becomes a little too good at it. And now we have a thrilling crime drama that is one of my favorite films I've ever seen. And if you have not checked it out, I genuinely recommend it. I don't know if you can find it streaming on a platform somewhere, or I don't know if you have to go into a Walmart, Best Buy, any type of local video store and buy a copy of it on Blu-ray, DVD, whatever you can find. Rent it online, buy it online. But whatever you do, you have to watch this movie. It's amazing. I know that films that I like, not a whole lot of people are into. It's definitely for a particular audience. Not even necessarily like the film nerd side of people, just kind of weird films that not everyone is quite into. But speaking of weird films, I went and saw this one called Beau is Afraid, and it's from director Ari Aster, and you definitely know of his previous two films, at least one of them. His previous films that he directed is Midsommar and Hereditary. The first one I mentioned there, Midsommar, is some of the best daylight horror I've ever seen. Whether or not you like the film is entirely up to you, because it definitely has some really interesting concepts. It certainly has some very weird imagery. That's for sure. That's the only thing that is for sure. But Hereditary was a film that released in theaters a few years ago, back in 2018 maybe, and it felt like not a whole lot of people saw it in theaters. I saw it in theaters opening night because it was just this, that like from the trailer alone, you can tell that the filmmaker knows what he's doing. And from the opening shot of the film, you can tell that you are in the hands of a master of the art. But essentially, not a whole lot of people, I believe, saw this movie in theaters, and then once it kind of hit shelves in stores, or it started to hit streaming platforms, people became a little more interested in the film. And now it's synonymous with being one of the scariest films ever made. It's typically on a few people's list of like the scariest movie they've ever watched. It's certainly on my list. But Beau is Afraid, I don't want to say too much, from Ari Aster, really, really weird. I think it only hit a few theaters across North America. I don't know about outside of North America. And again, like I say, sorry about this being entirely about movies. It's one of my passions that I enjoy talking about, and so I wanted to take the time today to talk a little bit about those films. But either way, I think that's going to be it. Take care.